Hello, this is Wmpyr here to talk about my knife design that you are viewing right here. This was inspired by recently watching a video about the tracker knife from the original designer, Rob Russin. And yeah, you could go on YouTube to Utah Knife Works, and they say the interview with the original designer for the tracker knife. And uh, please check out that video. It's an amazing video. It's an hour, basically an hour long. And after watching that, I got so inspired. And like before, I wouldn't have. I don't think I would have really designed the knife inspired by the tracker knife from the movie The Hunted. Why? Because that knife is a bushcraft knife. That knife is a wilderness survival knife. And that's just, it's not my area of expertise. I am fascinated with the subject, but it's just something I don't really know much about. And the reason why I was fascinated this time is after watching that video, I felt like I understood the knife much, much more, and it's fascinating design. And I really liked the main idea, the concept of Rob Russon going and thinking basically, look, in the wilderness survival books that he was reading, they said, you're going to need multiple blades. You're going to need multiple tools. And he was just trying to minimize that by combining them into one tool. And that made sense to me, lighten your load, right? Especially for something like that. And using the same concept of, because basically that is a multi-tool, right? It's kind of like a Swiss Army knife. The wilderness survival knife, the tracker knife is that he designed. It has multiple features on there that is designed to do that. It has specific functions, right? So it's a multi-tool essentially. So here I was going to do the same kind of thinking process, a multi-tool, but instead of survival, it's going to be for martial arts, right? And so in martial arts, it's not so much about tools. I was thinking more about techniques, different techniques. So you see this knife right here, it has numbers on there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So each one of those numbers is going to be for a technique, or techniques. So number one is, it says spear point, and that was for the knife fencing. Okay, and I've made several videos talking about how knife fencing, I feel, is better than knife boxing in a self-defense situation. So right away, that is for, like doing techniques such as the lunge. So number two is the arm catcher, and to me that is just, it's goes along with many martial arts styles, but with Filipino martial arts, where we could use it to catch, jam, pin, trap the opponent's arm. So that's what we're using. That whole curve right there. That's not a saw. That's not a saw blade like on the tracker knife. That is just very, very aggressive jimping to hold on to the arm. Okay, and the curvature there is so that it works better with the arm. That it catches it. So that's an arm catcher part. Number three is a knife catcher. I recently read a book with, it was featuring Miyamoto Musashi's weapons and his sword methods. And in it, I was surprised to learn that his ancestor was a ninja. And his ancestor was already doing two-handed weapons. So Musashi's famous for doing the two-sword kind of thing. And in that book, it basically said that Musashi wasn't the first. And then it said, like, for example, his ancestor was using a spear tip and a sword. The spear tip, it was one that I believe the ancestor had invented, and it was heavily modified, but it was kind of like a crucifix-shaped spear, which eventually, I don't know if it eventually led to, but the Japanese police at the time were using sword catchers because so many people had swords, and they needed something to neutralize that, right? If you're going to apprehend the suspect, you're going to need something that can neutralize the sword. So it's a weapon called the jutte, which is their police baton back in the day. And that thing had the ability to catch a sword. So using that weapon, the jutte design, I wanted to put a little bit in there. So that's number 3. That's where the knife catcher or blade catcher, when you're going in to neutralize the other person's knife, which is part of my system. And I've been telling you guys that that is the true origins of trapping. The trapping that you see in Wing Chun, the trapping that you see in Jeet Kune Do and other Kung Fu styles, and also in Filipino martial arts. I was saying that the origins of that is weapon-on-weapon combat, and what my buddy Sensei Pedro said, which was in Western historical martial arts, they call it binding, when two swords are clash. They clash together, and you can neutralize the weapon. So to help with that, that's number 3. Number 4 is a karambit point. Okay, so essentially this blade has a hidden karambit inside, and for me, I really like that kind of idea there. That even though this is one knife, it kind of has like multiple knives. So it has that spear aspect in there. It has the karambit, and the karambit is something that I have studied. It is something that I trained. So the karambit blade right there, sneaking that in there it just made sense to me. And of course, the techniques, especially in the reverse grip, it's gonna shine, and you will be able to do knife boxing with this knife. So that's definitely the karambit part. Number 5 is the kris point, the kris knife, which they also have something similar in the Filipino martial arts, but also very, very famous in Indonesia, and the Indonesian silat, right, is the kris knife. It's almost like a kris sword, right? So in Southeast Asia, they have this. For a knife, it's pretty massive. For a sword, it's kind of short. So they have this thing called a kris. And some kris blades have it to where it kind of extends out, and it's basically almost acts as like a cross guard, a guard for your pointer finger. So I wanted that aspect there, but that in itself could also be used in extreme close quarters. So that's the technique for that. That's number 5. Number 6 is the hammer area. It's not going to have a round, flat surface, but I wanted a square, flat surface. And purpose is for hammering. If you need to hammer something real quick, boom, there you go. It's not a great hammer, but really, I'm not here to do a multi-tool for like tools. Once again, this is technique. So this is really what I'm talking about is hammer fist. So in the martial arts, you're doing a hammer fist action. And the reason why it's flat there is also if you need to do any kind of like support, where you could use the palm of your hand or even use parts of your body to press against the number 6 area to help you dig the blade in. you can do that because it's nice and flat. Number 7 is the skull crusher. It would also act as a glass breaker, but once again, I'm not interested in uh, the tool portion, right? So um, that is used so that you have some kind of point on the bottom side, and you could use that to dig in or pressure point, weak point strikes, even cutting type stuff, because that those edges there on number 7 is not going to be rounded. I wouldn't want it to be rounded. So that's the idea right there. Now, so I covered all the major numbers. The 2 holes you see in the handle is to make a makeshift spear, and that once again goes with the Miyamoto Musashi, the greatest, one of the legendary great swordsmen um, on the history of the planet that that we know of today. This guy, like I said, his ancestor carried that spear point and used it as a spear when necessary. So this is the same idea right here. You use this as an actual spear when necessary. So those 2 holes will help you tie it. Also, you can make a hand sling or some kind of wrist wrap, so you could do it either at the top or at the bottom. And a hand sling would just be so you could slide your fingers in, and it would just help you not drop the knife. Let's see what else. I think those are. Oh yeah, the spear point. It is centered on. If you look at the top and the bottom of the handle, I made it centered where the point is. So um, if you look at, for example, the tracker knife, I believe the point is way up to the spine or close to the spine of the blade, and if I'm not mistaken, let me make sure that is true. So yeah, it's very, very close to the spine of the blade. So for this one, I wanted it in the center of the blade, and once again, that is for the knife fencing aspect. Oh yeah, so if you look at number 5 and number 7, so number 5 is the crisp point. Number 7 is essentially the beak right there. Um, so you put your hand in between those 2 points, okay? And before I really hated that idea that my hand's going to be trapped in there, but a different perspective is if your hand is in there, then there is you could create some pressure between 5 and 7 by kind of like almost like spreading your hand a little bit, and that gives the fingers a break. And not only does that give the fingers a break, it the structure of how this knife is in your hand becomes more like it's connected to your palm. So then, rather than gripping it, and then that puts strain on the wrist, it becomes closer to it's now really part of your hand. It's more like a structure on your hand, like spikes, thorns, and blades coming out of your hand, rather than you gripping this thing, like a club. So that's an added benefit right there, that would be possible. So I think, yeah, I covered the main points on this thing. So, this is a technique-based knife, and that's why it's called the multi-technique knife. MTK1. Why 1? Because I want to make more. 2, I want to design 2, 3, 4, 5. Just have different ideas like that. But as far as like the name of this knife, there is no name right now. I'm thinking it kind of looks like, because of the beak and then where the lanyard hole is at the bottom there, to me it's looking kind of like a falcon of some sort, and then the wing is obviously the blade. So I'm thinking of some kind of yeah, falcon related name is what I'm thinking about, but I don't have an official name at this point. So this is MTK1. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for viewing, and take care, folks.